Hey guys, Booligan here with Booligan Shooting Sports. Today I'm going to take a look at an interesting gun from my firearm collection. Not many guns of mine live in a shadow box display case, but this one is pretty special. We'll pull this out of the case and we'll take a look at why it's special to me, and why I will never, ever, ever get rid of this gun. The gun itself really isn't anything special. It's not particularly rare or particularly valuable. It's a Pieper, it's Belgian, and I don't understand how to pronounce it properly, but it's a Pieper new model, caliber 25 ACP. Tiny, tiny little pocket gun. I don't have a lot of information about its date of manufacture. I don't know how old it is, but I do know that it is small and very, very cool. But the gun itself is only part of the puzzle and only part of the reason why it is currently in my collection. This is the reason why it is in my collection. We'll get to that in just a second. The story starts like many of my stories start, on Reddit. Somebody had posted that they had built Han Solo's blaster, a DL-44. They had built it out of a proper, handgun, a proper pistol. And someone had commented, "Oh, well, I've got Darth Vader's gun." And I'm like, Darth Vader doesn't use guns. What are we talking about here? And he posted a picture, and it was of a Luger, along with a signed certificate of authenticity showing that it was from James Earl Jones' private collection. It's kind of got my head spinning a little bit and got me to do a little bit of research. Turns out James Earl Jones, voice of my childhood, voice of Darth Vader, voice of Mufasa, King from Coming to America. I mean, I could go on and on. James Earl Jones is a legendary actor. He's also kind of a legendary firearm collector. A little bit strange. But the guy loves guns. Thousands and thousands of guns. We're not talking, he doesn't have a million high points. The guy has, he's a pretty frequent customer of Holland and Holland. The guy spends a lot of money on guns. So that got me to research a little bit more and to figure out, okay, so apparently James Earl Jones is a gun guy. Why are people getting his guns? Led me to find out that there is a store, which I will not name, but you can do some online research and find very, very easily. It took me a couple of minutes. That he is a good friend of Mr. Jones, and over the years he has passed along some guns to sell on consignment for Mr. Jones. And there are certain rules and caveats that he has. One, he cannot advertise the fact that they are James Earl Jones guns, but you could pretty easily find out if they are. Most of the guns that he sells, and one or two will pop up at a time. Apparently well over 1,000 have passed through his hands as part of his collection. But you could find out pretty easily whether one is from his collection, and most of the stuff, like I said, is super, super high-end, thousands of dollars worth of guns. But in my search, I find this super cheap little Pieper new model, and it's almost too good to be true. And that's what really had me digging into the research. The gentleman doesn't pay and tell, but needless to say, what I paid for this, along with this hand-autographed certificate of authenticity, I paid less for this than a good autographed 8x10 photo from James Earl Jones. And that includes an autographed certificate of authenticity. I paid less for this, realistically, than you can find this model on Gunbroker. About half the price, actually. So I've had this guy in my collection for a little while. I don't do anything with it. It sits. I 3D printed a stand. So here's its tiny little magazine. But I 3D printed a stand for it so that it can sit in its little shadow box, you know, in a nice display position, as well as, you know, with the magazine there. It also included a holster, but the holster is kind of hard mounted into that. But you will occasionally see people listing stuff on Gunbroker that they have purchased from this gentleman and then relist for sale for just outrageous prices. And I will never do that. This thing is never going to leave my collection. This thing is going to be passed down to my kids along with the story. In purchasing this, I got to have a good long discussion with Charles, the gentleman who runs the store that sold this to me, about, you know, his relation to James Earl Jones and how they met and how they got along. And he's a very, very interesting guy. And James Earl Jones, I don't want to say my respect level for him went up, because my respect level for him was already pretty much through the roof. But my understanding of who he is as a person actually, you know, it resonates a little bit more now. And to own a firearm, again, I can't say whether he actually shot this. I can't say whether he carried this. I can't say any of that stuff. I just know that this has a well-documented provenance. The story backs up. And it's just an interesting little gun from his collection. And that is super, super cool. Some of the details of the gun. I mean, the story is the cooler part than the gun, but we'll take a look at the gun. You can find these. They're pretty accessible. They're going to cost about $300 to $400 from what I've seen on Gunbroker. But it is a steel handgun, very, very small. It's a striker fired. There are no sights. It just has a trench sight going up the top to give you a very rudimentary sight picture. But this is a 25 ACP. This thing isn't exactly designed to be, you know, sniping people from long ranges. That's just not going to happen. It has a grip safety as well as a safety lever up front, which also doubles as your slide lock. Simple blowback. It just kind of cycles back. I have not shot this for a million different reasons, but I have done a little bit of dry firing on it, and it's actually not too bad. You kind of have to get a good purchase of it, and it just, oh, if I could actually cock it, there we go. Get a good grip on it. And, oh, has a magazine lock, now I recall. There's no magazine in it. Has a heel magazine release. The magazine is this little tiny guy. 25 ACP rounds are kind of hilarious. It does have a cracked grip on the right side and just a little bit of gunk on the left side. I have cleaned this up a little bit. I have done some oiling to keep it, you know, intact and keep it preserved and keep it from being rusted. And now that I've touched it, I'm going to re-oil it before I put it back in its display case. But it's just a very cool, very, very cool gun with an even cooler story. And I'll be damned if it is not the coolest provenance of any gun. This alone is worth what I paid for it. Easily. And just to have this unique piece of history, very cool. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this sort of stories from my gun collection. Not all of my firearms have cool stories. Very few of them do. But I figure you guys might enjoy this one and understand now why I have this little gun kind of hanging up in some of my videos that you'll see at my design studio. It looks over me all the time. So thanks for watching, and yeah, stay tuned for more interesting stuff on the channel. I've got some more 3D printed firearms that I've been working on, some normal just firearm projects, some machined, welded firearm projects, some very cool stuff. So stay tuned for that, and of course, thanks for watching.